This is an ad by Regain Couples Therapy. Let's be honest. Loving your partner doesn't mean you always like them, and guess what? That's normal. Regain, powered by BetterHelp, offers couples therapy that's flexible, affordable, and 100% online. Whether you're reconnecting or working through conflict, Regain is here to support you both. See why people wish they'd tried couples therapy sooner. Visit regain.com/couplespod to get 10% off your first month. That's regain.com/couplespod.
Did I put the clothes in the dryer? I hope they don't think I was serious.
I need to be
about
awake.
Snacks.
I've got my brain shut
Just
off.
sleep already.
When your racing thoughts keep you up at night, it's tough to let go and get the rest you need. Better sleep can help. You might have heard of white or brown noise, but there's a whole rainbow of color noises, and they can help you calm your mind, reduce stress, and sleep better, like the green noise you're listening to now. With the Better Sleep app, you can discover more color noises and over 200 soothing sounds, guided meditations, and bedtime stories. High-quality rest is vital to your mental well-being and physical health. Calm your restless mind, conquer your day, and sleep better at night. Download Better Sleep from the App Store or Google Play and start a 7-day trial today. Because when you sleep better, you feel better.
Hey, welcome to Lovey Las Vegas for Cusco Soups with myself, Greg Eaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. In a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Blake Lovell. He does such an amazing job over at Southeastern 16. We're going to chat about a few different things with him. We certainly need to talk about the St. Joe's situation, the fact that they lose their coach in Billy Lange in the middle of September, and just what that means for him and why it might not be a death sentence for St. Joe's. We've seen this in the past where teams have lost their coach a few weeks before the start of the season, and many of them have actually been just fine. So we're going to be addressing that. And then we do have to talk about the SEC, who are going to be some of the surprise teams. Missouri's dealing with a few injuries and is very different looking than what they have been in past years. So we're going to be addressing that and so much more. Blake does such an incredible job of taking a look at this sport, so we are going to have a great chat with him today. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you are able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever they want. EdgeBoost is making sure that 100% of gambling transactions do indeed get approved. And when you go to EdgeBoost.bet, utilize that promo code of GREG, G-R-E-G, as that'll get you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. And leading up to the upcoming season, we're going to be doing live two-part conversations, and we still have 7 conference previews remaining. The Atlantic 10 and American are going to be coming your way most likely in the next 5 to 6 days, and then from there, we got the Power 5 conferences. So the going is getting good on those, and the going is always great whenever we get Blake aboard. He does such an amazing job of taking a look at this great sport that we all know and love of college basketball. Obviously, with working over at Southeastern 16, a emphasis on the SEC, but that said, he does a great job covering all 364 teams. He's actually joined me for a few of those conference previews as well, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at the Blake Lovell. Last name is spelled Lovell. And Blake, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Greg.
Always a pleasure, Blake. And Blake, I know that your main beat is out there in the SEC. That's why you work for SEC 6. That's why you work for Southeastern 16. But that said, what did you make out of everything that we saw this past week with St. Joe's losing their coach in Billy Lange, who he joins the New York Knicks, but is not even necessarily on the coaching staff. He's just going to be sort of in like the front office. He might be like grabbing rebounds for the guys, being the towel boy, things like that. But what do you make out of this situation with St. Joe's, who they are now out of the Players Era tournament as a result of losing their coach as well, and this is having some big giant effects on them.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said, I mean, the timing always, anytime you get moves like this, less than 2 months from the start of the season, it's not ideal. That's for sure for the program. And, it's a St. Joseph's program that's coming off of building a little bit of momentum, right? I mean, they really sort of struggled, to say the least, in his first several years there. They won 6 wins, I think, the first year, 5 the next year. Of course, that was kind of a season where they didn't play as many games due to all the restrictions and everything. But, 11 wins, 16 wins. They got to 21 and 22 back-to-back NIT appearances, which I know a long-time college basketball fan used to see in St. Joe's in the NCAA tournament. Hasn't happened in a little bit. The timing is interesting just because, again, it felt like they were moving in the right direction as a program. But, again, sometimes certain coaches are going to be motivated by different things. And this was a guy who had been there for, again, 6 seasons already, about to enter his 7th season. Didn't seem like they were necessarily going to be an A-10, title favorite or anything like that. So may have been sort of the similar expectations, maybe getting back to the NIT, something like that. So, yeah, takes a job with the Knicks. And again, I think it just comes down to sometimes it's that motivation level for certain guys. Hey, getting to the league, being able to be involved with a professional organization like the Knicks, who talk about turnarounds, completely different than what it used to be. And so, yeah, I think that's probably, without knowing all the full details for someone like that, may just have been sort of the deciding factor for him.
Yep, and I think that what is so interesting about this as well is a lot of times when you think of a coaching change that happens late in the process, typically it's doomsday. But we take a look at what has happened in recent years. Like, this is going a little bit way back, but when Niagara lost their coach late in the process, they brought in Greg Paulus. That turned out pretty well for them. We remember the Greg Marshall situation at Wichita State. Wichita State actually made the NCAA tournament immediately after Greg Marshall, and I don't think that this is necessarily the death sentence that a lot of people think that it is for St. Joe's. And I'm sure that you've heard this too. A lot of people felt like Billy Lange was underachieving at St. Joe's. Now you bring in a coach that maybe isn't quite the same recruiter as Billy Lange, but he might be a little bit better with the X's and O's.
Well, and yeah, I think, again, it goes down to, look, they were going to probably, and we don't know exactly just yet, but you can look at the Blue Ribbon College Basketball Yearbook and some other, preseason stuff out there. I mean, they're probably going to be a team that's picked sort of in the middle of the pack, something like that would be my guess. And so, again, you're looking at that conference feeling like, all right, we're not down there at the bottom, where we're not with those teams that feel like they have just simply fallen off and it's really hard to make that move back up. We're right there feeling like we have a chance to make some forward movement. And well, now our coach decides he's going to go back to the NBA because, again, I forgot to mention that a minute ago. That is part of the discussion. It's a guy who, before he came to St. Joe's, had been with the Sixers for a while there as an assistant. He's a New Jersey guy. So all of the stuff makes sense in terms of him making this move. But like you said, I don't think just because he makes this decision now, it is going to just completely put St. Joseph's in a situation where they can't go out and have success, because it'd have been a lot different, right? If you had simply, let's say, gone out several months ago or something and completely kind of still maybe trying to make some roster moves or something like that. And then all of a sudden you have this change. Well, then you feel like you're a bit behind in terms of how maybe you try to catch up. But no, they've got their roster set for the upcoming season. The players are acclimated with the other guys now. And so, yes, it's going to be completely different, but they are already acclimated with the coaches that are there. And so I think, yeah, it isn't one where I think they're still going to have some opportunity, and it is going to be an adjustment. We know how this works, but at the same time, you can point to previous examples where teams have had success when these kind of things happen. It's not like you're looking at a roster here that doesn't feel like you can win games. I think they absolutely can. And, maybe hitting that 20-win mark again seems like a possibility, even though we'll see how they adjust, after losing their coach to the NBA.
Yep, and you did mention something very interesting with regards to roster, as Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. These players do have 30 days to enter in the transfer portal, but I just can't see a lot of guys being able to do so, because even if you really wanted to, I remember being in college about a decade or so ago, it takes a while for those credits to be able to transfer over. You need to be able to find just a way to be able to get enrolled in the university. It's hard to do so after Labor Day, which is when a lot of these schools start up, and I don't think that a lot of these guys are going to be able to move. It's unfortunate for the players, but I think that they're just sort of stuck at this point. And even if they really, really, really wanted to transfer, it would be a lost season for them if they did, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't really see a ton of upside for a lot of the guys. And again, you could have a couple that maybe are looking at this and saying, all right, well, hey, this gives me an opportunity. Maybe I wasn't already feeling this, and a little bit, maybe less than I thought. Well, now I got an opportunity to get out, and I can do it before the season starts. But like you said, there's not necessarily a ton of upside there. And I think at least just in the short term, look, you've already bonded with your fellow teammates. You've already got, all of this stuff in terms of being able to kind of put your roster together. But at the same time, we know there are going to be challenges when keeping a roster. It's a different era. It's not just a matter of, all right, well, I played with these guys in the summer. Well, you can bet there's going to be people out there saying, hey, I know it's September, but I've got a few dollars that I think you may enjoy. It's those kind of things. And like you said, it's kind of unpredictable. We don't really know exactly how that part of this whole equation is going to play out, but I don't know that there is a ton of upside for these guys right now, because like you mentioned, you don't really know what that process looks like elsewhere. If you decide to go X, well, am I going to have to sit out for this long, or how long is this going to take, and all those things. And look, it's not just your roster either we're talking about. It's everyone else's roster. These teams already feel like they have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do. The other teams have a head start in terms of their players already acclimating to each other. And if you're a new player trying to come in and just jump into the mix, that seems like a tough ask this late in the process. So we'll see what it looks like. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if you do get, a couple players or something that make that decision, but it's very hard to know in this era just because it's not anything like it was even a decade or so ago, just based on, all the movement and all the factors that go into it.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks, especially with St. Joe's no longer part of the Players Era tournament. That's just not great, to say the least. And how about if we take a break here, and on the flip side, we go a little bit more SEC heavy, as Blake, he does tremendous work over at Southeastern 16. Missouri's dealing with some injuries, and they look a little bit different than they have in the past. We're certainly going to be addressing that. Who could be a few surprise teams out there in the SEC? Who are some of the unknowns of the conference? We'll be talking about that and so much more on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family podcast.
Did I put the clothes in the dryer? I hope they don't think I was serious
I need to be
about
awake
that.
and
Snacks.
hungry.
I forgot my
Hours.
brain
Shut
just
off.
sleep already.
When your racing thoughts keep you up at night, it's tough to let go and get the rest you need. Better sleep can help. You might have heard of white or brown noise. There's a whole rainbow of color noises, and they can help you calm your mind, reduce stress, and sleep better, like the green noise you're listening to now. With the Better Sleep app, you can discover more color noises and over 200 soothing sounds, guided meditations, and bedtime stories. High-quality rest is vital to your mental well-being and physical health. Calm your restless mind, conquer your day, and sleep better at night. Download Better Sleep from the App Store or Google Play and start a 7-day trial today. Because when you sleep better, you feel better.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family podcast. It is always a pleasure to be joined by Blake Lovell. He does a tremendous job over at Southeastern 16. Follow him on the old Twitter /X at the Blake Lovell. Last name is spelled Lovell. And Blake, we certainly were able to hit upon the St. Joe's situation in the first part. Now let's go out to your neck of the woods. Let's talk a little bit more about the SEC. We did see a little bit from Missouri over last week as well. Trent Burns, it looked like he was going to be redshirting to start with. He's going to be out for 8 to 12 weeks. He's a 7'3", 7'4" big man for Missouri. And I want to get your thoughts on this Missouri roster, because now they're dealing with a little bit of injury with Burns most likely being out of the fold for a good portion of the season. And for Missouri, we both know this. Under Dennis Gates, it's always all about these guards. It's always all about being able to play super duper up tempo. It just feels like it's a completely different roster for them this year. And I feel like they might be one of the bigger unknowns, not just in the SEC, but in all of college basketball, with the roster just looking completely different than how it has last few years for this bunch with so much size.
Yeah, I think they've got, I think it's like 7, maybe I'm even selling it short by a number, but I think they've got 7 guys that are 6'8" or taller on this roster.
I think they have 3 players that are below 6'6".
I mean, right? It's just like, it's a big roster. And I think it's one where, like you said, an injury for someone who is just a huge player. And, you can't teach the kind of size that he has. But it's like the one thing I feel like we know about Dennis Gates at Missouri is that first month or so, you're going to see so many different combinations and so many different rotations that they're going to work with that I think eventually you can kind of figure out what the best match is. And I think that's where, okay, do they wind up playing, several of these guys where, again, like we said, I mean, they sporting 3 or more players at the same time out there that are 6'9" or taller. I think it's a realistic possibility because if you think about it, right, you've got all these guys like Trent Pierce and Sean Phillips and such, but then you've got Mark Mitchell. And I would think if you're Missouri, you are probably want to find a way to get all three of those guys on the floor together at the same time. And that makes for a very tough dynamic for the opposing team. Now, you've got a 6'8" Jacob Cruz, who I think is going to probably be one of their X factors this year. I think they need him to add a scoring element on this team. The backcourt seems pretty set in terms of your top guys, whether it's Ant Robinson, Sebastian Mack comes over, T.O. Barrett, and so forth. So, yeah, I think Missouri has one of the more intriguing front courts, not just from the size standpoint, but just the number standpoint. And so you have a little bit of an injury here to someone where, again, with Trent Burns, again, you just can't teach the kind of size this guy has. But I think it's going to be something where we learn that first month. It's going to, at times, and I know it frustrates Missouri fans, it's just different combinations you're going to see out there. One guy, one game may play 5 minutes. The next game, he may play 27 minutes. And I just think that's kind of the way it's going to be. They have a pretty good feel, I think, on their coaching staff for how they like to figure out what best combinations to work with. And I think they at least have the depth here to where we'll find out pretty soon, I think, within that first month, how they want to play with this team and maybe how different it is from some of their previous teams.
Yep, it is going to be so interesting because I just can't anticipate them being the exact same team that they have been in the past, with losing someone like a Caleb Grill as well. As we both know, he was a pretty big heart and soul piece of that team as well. I'm very fascinated to see how they're going to be looking, and I feel like there's a few wild cards out there in the SEC this year. Certainly Missouri, how they're going to be looking is interesting. I think that you'd probably agree with me. Texas A&M, I don't know exactly what to expect out of them because Bucky McMillan obviously played a style over at Samford where there was a lot of turnovers to be generated, but this just doesn't feel like a roster that's going to be able to generate as many turnovers. They've got a little bit of size with Frederico, so nice they named him twice out there as well. And then I look at Texas with bringing in Sean Miller, and they're an interesting team as well where we always know that Sean Miller is going to coach up good offense, but how is that going to look in year number one? So I do think that there is a lot of intrigue in the SEC with those teams like Missouri, Texas A&M, and Texas being, in my opinion, perhaps the biggest three unknowns in the conference.
I have been pretty high on all these teams, and I think it's just simply looking at them and trying to see the upside, right? Because no one's lost a game yet, and that's always important. Until a team loses, or at least, you see different things where you're like, uh-oh, I don't know if they can fix that this season. Try to be optimistic. And I think with these teams in particular, for Missouri, it's banking on you've got an SEC Player of the Year candidate in Mark Mitchell, and you've got a lot of depth maybe around him, even if it's going to look a little different than it has in previous seasons, maybe in terms of how they have to play to win. And then with Texas, they've got a guy in Tremont Mark that is going to be one of the most experienced players in the league. I think you look at just the roster as a whole with Weaver and Wilcher and Pope and, all these guys. Traore, I think, is going to make a big impact for them. He's probably not being talked about enough. We remember him, Greg, when he was at Long Beach State. This is just a guy that I think is going to come in and make a huge impact in terms of having the physicality you need in the SEC to be successful. Overall, I think Texas is a team that I'm very fascinated by. And I think for Sean Miller, he is someone where I'm going to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to probably getting the best out of this roster. So I think Texas, a lot of potential there. And then A&M, I don't know why, and maybe I should know why, but they are probably the team that has grown on me the most this offseason. And I think it's just because it's going to take more than just that first group, I think, for them to be able to be successful and, let's say, win, double-digit games in the league this year or something. But if you do look at that kind of starting core that they're going to have, I would probably feel pretty confident putting that up against a lot of teams in the SEC, just in terms of maybe what the projected first five is going to be. But then beyond that, I think is where sometimes you're going to have some questions about who are going to be the guys that can really be able to make a big contribution in the SEC. And if they can answer some of those questions, I think Texas A&M kind of is a sneaky team that probably will go into the season being underrated a bit from a lot of people. I think you can see the path for them. And like you said, there are some things they're going to have to do playing style-wise differently than Buckyball had at Samford. It's going to have to be a different version of Buckyball this year. I don't know that he's got the complete roster he needs to play that style this season, but I at least look at this and say, they are pretty talented, and they got a lot of experience in terms of those guys that have played a lot of minutes elsewhere. So I think A&M, for me, if I had to pick one team out of the SEC, I think they're the one I'm probably keeping my eye on the most because I can see the path to them maybe exceeding expectations.
Yep, and with Texas A&M, the talent is there. We just don't know exactly the style because I think that we're both in agreement. I don't think that you can play that traditional Samford style. I think that there's going to be a couple fewer turnovers generated with these guys, but still, I do think that the need for speed is there, as Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I mentioned need for speed because it feels like that's going to be this conference this year. Because I just take a look around the SEC. It used to be where Texas A&M and Tennessee were really those slow, controlled teams that really played a lot of defense. Well, Buzz Williams is gone, and now you replace him with Bucky McMillan, who is playing super up-tempo over at Samford. And now, other than really Tennessee, it feels like a lot of these teams are playing up-tempo. They really value just being able to get shots up in general. Like, look at Alabama, for example, a team that they're going to hoist it up. Even a bad shot is better than taking no shot whatsoever in their book. And I think that's going to be really interesting, especially how Tennessee does, because it feels like they're the lone black sheep in the conference where everyone else is looking to play super up tempo. Everyone else is looking to prioritize offense. And certainly Tennessee has been able to maximize offense in recent years, but they're still a little bit more of a defense first team. And they're essentially like the only one that I identify in the SEC as being such.
Yeah, and I think, again, that helps them. And I feel like it's one where Rick Barnes has kind of realized, hey, we still have a certain style that works for us. I talked a couple of days ago to Tennessee associate head coach Justin Gainey, and I was just saying, hey, this feels like a different roster. And obviously, you guys know the stat about how good you've been defensively over the past 5-6 seasons. And, the defensive efficiency numbers have been top 5 and all that. Now, that was with Kai Ziegler. And, it's a little bit different now, not having him on the roster, but it is a different roster. But I'm like, you just assume they're going to find a way to keep playing that same kind of style, even if you've got new elements to it, whether it's Jacoby Gillespie, whether it's Nate Ament, or guys like that. And so when you look around at these other teams, like you mentioned, Florida, they're not going to hold back. Look at the guards they brought in, knowing their big men can run the court as well as anybody. So you're going to have Xavier Lee, you're going to have Boogie Flan pushing the tempo, I think, for the Gators. And look, I will say this too. I think it cannot be sort of discounted how big of an effect that Nate Oates has had, not just on other coaches in the SEC, but I think elsewhere too, right? Because you just see the success that he's been able to have year after year in terms of the philosophies that he's put in at Alabama, all the different concepts they use in terms of how they want to run their offense, all their transition stuff and all of that. And you've seen, I think, many other coaches just say, hey, this is kind of a model where, Nate Oates has this philosophy. There have been many philosophies in the past, right? Go back to Rick Pitino's days at Kentucky. There are so many other elements over the years of teams that were just pushing the basketball and being able to get down the court. But now that you've got the kind of offensive talent that you have in this league, you've got the speed, the size, and guys that just can go downhill the way that a lot of these guards in the SEC can. That's where you're seeing Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt's a team that probably should not be overlooked in this discussion, because you can look at the entire sort of style of Mark Byington and see that it's really all about transition, spacing, like getting down the court, getting those open shots. And that's why, Greg, we talked a couple times already this summer, Vanderbilt to me is another team that I think people are going to absolutely sleep on coming into the season, but it would not shock me at all if Vanderbilt's a team that finishes in that top 6, top 7 in the SEC, because I think they've got the personnel with Tyler Nickel and all these different guys that they're bringing back and then adding to the mix to where I think they're going to play that style very well this year. And I think Mark Byington's got a great approach in terms of proving that they can win in the SEC after a pretty nice start last year.
And you go back about a decade and a half ago, and it felt like Vanderbilt was consistently a top 25 team. They were consistently making the NCAA tournament. I know that there might not be a ton of love out there in Nashville, Tennessee for Kevin Stallings, but Kevin Stallings, at the very least, was always able to get that team to winning teams. And then under Bryce Drew, Jerry Stackhouse, it just felt like it was injury after injury after injury. Mark Byington was able to reinstill a little bit of promise into this program, so I'm right there with you. I think that a lot of people are going to sleep on Vanderbilt, thinking that it's been what we had seen under Stackhouse and Drew, and I think that we're both in agreement that this is a completely different Vanderbilt team, and this is a new look SEC. And Blake, I know that I'm going to get you on for our SEC preview, which is going to be probably coming up in like early October, maybe super duper late September, but you're doing such an amazing job getting set for the upcoming college basketball season. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I always appreciate it, Greg. Yeah, you can find all our SEC stuff, Southeastern 16, like I mentioned. Yeah, we've been talking to a lot of coaches here. We'll continue to talk to more. Leading up to the start of the season, talked to Tennessee associate head coach Justin Gainey, Ole Miss head coach Chris Beard. We're going to be talking to Mississippi State head coach Chris Jans, and many others here over the next couple weeks to get everybody ready for the upcoming season. So yeah, find all our SEC stuff over there and everything else college basketball related. You can follow me on Twitter/X at the Blake Lovell.
Absolutely, and that's another team that we're going to need to talk about with Blake sooner rather than later. Ole Miss, a team that is also fascinating for this upcoming season with the guy Mark in Chris Beard that knows what the heck he is doing when it comes to coaching college basketball. And a man that knows what the heck he's doing in terms of evaluating college basketball is Blake. So big thanks to him for joining me right here on Cuz Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Cuz Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM. Naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I am with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. Still have 7 conference previews left to do. Plan on doing the American and the Atlantic 10 this week. Those should be up within the next, we're going to call it about 96 or so hours. Might be the next 5 days, but you know what? Those are going to be coming sooner rather than later. So buckle up on those, and hopefully you guys are appreciating us getting set for the upcoming college basketball season, because I'm with you guys every day, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Did I put the clothes in the dryer? I hope they don't think I was serious.
I need to be
about
awake
that.
in
Snacks.
3
I've got my
hours.
brain shut
Just
off.
sleep already.
When your racing thoughts keep you up at night, it's tough to let go and get the rest you need. Better sleep can help. You might have heard of white or brown noise. There's a whole rainbow of color noises, and they can help you calm your mind, reduce stress, and sleep better, like the green noise you're listening to now. With the Better Sleep app, you can discover more color noises and over 200 soothing sounds, guided meditations, and bedtime stories. High-quality rest is vital to your mental well-being and physical health. Calm your restless mind, conquer your day, and sleep better at night. Download Better Sleep from the App Store or Google Play and start a 7-day trial today. Because when you sleep better, you feel better.
The weather may be cooling down, but the deals are heating up during the Red Hot Sale event at Omaha Steaks. Save 50% site-wide on legendary steaks, beefy burgers, cozy comfort meals, and more. Plus, get an extra $35 off with code HOTSALE when you shop omahasteaks.com today. From tailgating essentials to everyday family favorites, the Red Hot Sale event is your chance to save big on everything you need to serve up fabulous fall flavor. USDA-certified tender steaks, plump and juicy air-chilled chicken, easy appetizers, and even cozy comfort meals for those busy weeknights. And every bite is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee. Don't wait. Blaze a trail to omahasteaks.com to save 50% site-wide on steaks and more during the Red Hot Sale event. Plus, get an extra $35 off with code HOTSALE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, code HOTSALE. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details.
There's a lot of pressure to wear the right clothes for every situation. But the clothes don't make the man. With Mack Weldon, you can build a wardrobe that looks polished in any setting and tells the world that you stay you wherever you go. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code MACK25. That's MackWeldon.com, promo code MACK25.